everybody, to Lip Balm's 43rd episode. This episode, we will be featuring three contemporary New Zealand poets, including Iain Britton, Jen Crawford, and Lisa Samuels, and we're delighted to have them with us, especially so early in the morning, their time. I think it's wonderful that we can do this cross-border readings, and I hope this continues long into the future, even after the crisis has finally abated. I'm going to introduce my co-host, Jonathan Penton, who founded UnlikelyStories.org, an electronic journal of literature and art. Since then, he's lent his editorial and management assistance to a number of literary and artistic ventures such as Mad Hat, the New Orleans Poetry Festival, Rigorous, and Big Bridge. In 2005, he founded Unlikely Books, which publishes 3 to 5 books of poetry a year. He's organized literary performances all across the United States and performed himself. His poetry books are Last Chap from Virgin Press 2004, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust, Prosthetic Gods from New Sins Press, and Standards of City from Lit Fest Press in 2016, and more recently the free e-chapbook Backstories, which you can download from Liverpool-based Jeffrey Sides Argotist ebooks. Jonathan, I'm thinking you're going to read something for us today.
I am. Thank you so much, Mark. So as the regulars know, I am not very prolific. So what I do most weeks is read something we've been publishing lately. And today I'd like to read something that we're going to publish at Unlikely Books in the forthcoming book, Getting Away with Everything. Getting Away with Everything is a jointly written by Vincent Cellucci and Christopher Shipman. And I'm going to read one of Vincent Cellucci's poems from that book, forthcoming book. It's called Gonna Set Your Flag on Fire. Big Chef been calling about Wildman again. One must wonder how many conversations like this have gone on behind their back. How he's become unhinged, disappearing and reappearing, wasted, missing work, threatening to murder producers and his former partner, best friend, enough to be the only one still talking about an intervention. And what kind of friend or flag boy am I when I talk him out of it, say there are Wildmans too far gone, living on stolen time? Which is the greater crime, to care or not care, to let or try to stop him, maybe call his dad or mental health? Even if it's not for me now, I do believe it's everyone's right to kill themselves. I'm sure people have accused me of the chore. Shit, somebody else probably called the cops already. The Big Chef's text read jail or coffin, and everyone knows the wild man knows there are guns in a sports car idling near, not to mention camels, coke, beer, weed, shrooms, ecstasy, LSD, poppers, speed, and probably meth, in whatever shape, form, or quantity they make it these days. Me being not as initiated in such things anymore, besides the occasional concert, camping trip, excuseless debauchery, or Mardi Gras. And hey, I've got no problem with drugs, myself or in society, even though people I love have probably felt quite the opposite. This curing requires careful planning, like a getaway, some tricky shit. It's so much more fun, easy, and desperate to not give a fuck, and that's where our wild man's at. And I've been there, believe me, but he's settled there, maybe longer than anyone I know, to the point of martyrdom. And wasn't Judas the best disciple? Someone will believe Jesus was a burner and lived in the quarter. He certainly loved the prostitutes, although now he has the scene, and fuck do I get a kick running into the kid. I won't lie, sometimes he provides and I take. At Cosimo's or the track, and he's shaking his ass, taking vivid pictures, passing a good time, cracking us up shit, faded ashy, and falling as he may be. We've got real history, and I love the Joker, even if I yearn for a former version, one I really identified with. A fellow car wreck orphan, I respected his hustle and ambition. Shit, did this already get in the past tense? Even so, I don't entirely fault him for his decisions. He certainly evolved out of his Southern prejudices. It's a fucked up world and he's making it fun, fucking it back. I get that. Fuck, I do the same, even though I haven't let go to the same degree. In fact, my grip is tightened, but does that mean I'm more or less enlightened? It certainly doesn't feel right when you let a friend get away, even if it's to a body-painted version of Vice, Paradise of Vice. Don't see his dealers or burner family coming up with bail or a shot of adrenaline when he needs it most, because there's no extricating him from them or New Orleans, nor can we longer enjoy the spectacle of friend killing. So we guiltily choose distance and our own cold getaway from a friend so long in need that it becomes greedy. Neither of us are going to bail him out next time, and none of us want to go to his funeral. I'm sure I've told him as much between beers, maybe key bumps before bed, but this violence is what poisons our aid. Running around with guns and threatening, that's where I got to stay on neutral ground. I've spent my time with the New Orleans Police Department and Louisiana Department of Corrections. In truth, I'm trying to leave the whole damn country not a felon and soon. So here you go, old wild man. Not even this poem can be your intervention. And I never felt like I was ever in a place myself to give one, considering I'll probably party next to you this very weekend. But to you, my friend, deep below the shell of sequins and chemicals, from one broken-hearted motherless brother to the other, I say, please, please, prove this poem wrong. All right, again, that's by Vincent Salucci, and it's in the forthcoming book, Getting Away with Everything. Okay, next I'd like to introduce another of our co-hosts, Cassandra Atherton. Cassandra Atherton is an award-winning writer, scholar of prose poetry, and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. Her most recent books of prose poetry are Pre-Raphaelite, Leftovers, and Fugitive Letters. She is currently writing a book of prose poetry on the atomic bomb with funding from the Australia Council. I've read it, it's wonderful. Cassandra co-wrote Prose Poetry and Introduction and the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry. She is commissioning editor for Westerly Magazine. Cassandra, will you read for us today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan. That was a great piece to start with. I'm just going to read a short prose poem based on Virginia Woolf and A Room of One's Own. You weigh me down like stones in a coat pocket until my incandescence is stifled and my nugget of pure truth is stripped back to a room in my grandparents' house in the suburbs where I once wrote poetry. The white desk is still there, pushed against the bay window. If I open the top drawer, I know that my old fountain pen will still be there, bite marks on the lid from long days at school. The garish hippopotamus curtains are still too red. The carpet is more of an electric blue than I remember. A little fish of an idea becomes a cat without a tail. How do I write the space between my heart and my pen? I would like to introduce our prolific and amazing co-host, Mark Vincennes, who you will find out from his bio is a man of many, many skills. He is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, a translator, an editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published 14 books of poetry, including more recently, Becoming the Sound of Bees, Leaning into the Infinite, The Syndicate of Water and Light, and my favorite title, And Here Comes the Night Dust. Vincennes' newest collection, The Little Book of Earthly Desires, and a novella set in ancient China, Three Towers of Tao, or How to Catch a Fortuitous Elephant, are both forthcoming in 2021 from Spuyten Duyvil. An album of music, ambience and verse, Left Hand Clapping, is also forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincennes is a prolific translator and has translated from German, Romanian, and French. He's published 10 books of translations, most recently Unexpected Development by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Merz with White Pine, and which was a finalist for the 2016 Cliff Becker's Book Prize in Translation. His translation of Klaus Merz's selected poems in Audible Blue is forthcoming from White Pine Press. His poems have been in so many amazing journals that I can only list a few of them, which are The Nation, Plowshares, The Los Angeles Review, World Literature Today, Raritan, Asymptote, and Plume. His work has received fellowships and grants from the Swiss Arts Council and Literary Colloquium Berlin, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Whitner Brinner Foundation for Poetry. Vincennes is editor and publisher of The Brilliant Mad Hat Press and publisher of The Amazing New American Writing. He has lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, and where, as everyone knows, but there's a couple of extras here, wait for it, there are more coyotes, possums, fireflies, and bears than there are people. So I think we should all get there sometime. Mark, will you read for us, please?
I would, and I will. And thanks for skipping over getting that fireflies thing right.
Sorry, fireflies.
This is a tiny excerpt from a novel I've been working on, which is a novel of prose poems. So each chapter is a prose poem in and of itself, but it's also the next chapter in the novel. And it's called The City of Lemons. You know you don't have to die, said Pencil Thin. At least, not yet. How do you mean? We all have to die. Yes, he said, but not just yet. I think Mother Nature has the final word, I said. Who knows if she'll even be around by then, he said, dipping his toe in the river. You've got to watch for the eels, he said. They love toes, especially hairy ones like mine. Remind them of floating caterpillars, apparently, he said. What a load of old tripe, said fisherwoman arriving in her canoe. Eels love a firm shoe, she said, just like your own foot. Today, her red bucket was full. Yes, she said, the lemons will feast tonight. There were rumbles in the news. In some way, it was a blessing. They read more than production quotas and predictions. Mother Nature had never failed us. She was the cash crop. She was the root systems and the fungal net. She was the fog and the rain that came pouring in off the valleys and fields. She was the life-giving sun up above the dome. She was the engineers and their wrenches and sprockets, their grommets and nuts. We all knew that. I mean, it was nice to have it reaffirmed. Still, you wanted to read something sometimes to change the mood. The more production their way, the more we wanted something else. Here it was. Lamb was unavailable across the globe. Lemons, yes, there were plenty of lemons, but no lambs to squeeze their juices upon. After being saturated in butter and white wine and garlic, of course. No lamb meant no little hearts to bleed for. One of mankind's most ultimate pleasures eradicated in a day or so. This angered the government bodies and institutions, the bureaucrats who had labored to increase all forms of productivity. There are no kings. This is not a kingdom, the headline read in red letters, blood red letters, almost dripping down the pages. The consortium of cities was at odds with that illustrious city. The only one left plated in gold. A faction had formed among the unionists and the clergy. The article said, who were clamoring for lamb's blood. I had to do something to change the mood, and thus, for the first time in years, I went swimming in the marshes with the eels. And we now move on to our amazing future today. And we're going to hear from Iain Britton first. Iain was born and educated in Palmerston, North Aotearoa, New Zealand. He left teaching in the latter part of the 60s and lived in London for many years. Later, he went and lived in the New Forest village of Ringwood and became a teacher of English as a foreign language in Bournemouth, Dorset in the UK. In 1980, he returned to New Zealand to teach in a predominantly Maori community in rural Tawihiti on the east coast of the North Island, then moved to a large independent school for boys in Auckland, where he was responsible for Maori studies. Besides being published widely in New Zealand and Australia, Iain has published several collections of poetry, mainly in the UK. His poems have also been published or are forthcoming in many journals, including the Harvard Review, Poetry, the New York Times, the New Humanist, the Long Poem Magazine. His book, The Intaglio Poems, was published by Hester Glock Press in the UK in 2017. He now lives in the small resort town of Taupo, beside the largest freshwater crater lake in the world, or so he's been told. Welcome, Iain. Unfortunately, you're muted at the moment, Iain. We're going to try to unmute you.
Iain, I had asked to unmute. Did that work?
Can you hear me?
Here we go.
Yeah.
You're good. You're good, Iain.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. I repeat, kia ora koutou. Raore ni tingarama. Ka nui te mihi, ka nui te mihi. Greetings from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Thank you for this invitation. I consider it a privilege to be amongst you all. So what I'm going to do is going to read to you some short poems, 14-liners. You may call them sonnets. I don't see them as sonnets. I just see them as a discipline for myself to work within a poetic fence of 14 lines. So that's what that was my aim. So, okay, so I'll read to you some of those. And the first one is I like standing. I like standing, knowing I'm not the only one inhabiting this hollow shaft, this glazed eye of silent motion. I like gaps. I like the sense of being within the awareness of a stark transparency, the tingles of sky fade, earth fade. I listen to more than I should. Time enough spent window wiping the winter mists which obscure the lagoon. Enough for science to resurrect a phantom, groping after one more morning, coloring in the skinned remains of a rainbow. This one is strapped to a star wheel. Strapped to a star wheel, the showman spins to the conditions. He views earth and sky from many angles, rising or falling, everything's in his face. He gestures with outstretched arms, hurtles through a molecular chaos of blood vessels and into the mass of a dark red hole. He plunges into Orpheus's vent, swims the underground pools for thermal lovers. The showman unfolds hydraulically and hangs like a colossal puzzle, preparing for the next southerly blast, the next God breath to stand him on his head. His astral pendulum seldom stops. The weather shapes the size of his heart. Yesterday's astral consumption. Yesterday's astral consumption will cough it all up, as regular as sunup, as fish leaping. The sea rubs against my skin, against the bodies of maimed fantasies. It uses me as a thoroughfare. I feel an intimacy, a topsy-turvy of grief and ecstasy. The sea is close, is closer. The sea pounds at shells. It guts itself on jagged rocks, on an island sinking in mud. The sea is a carnivore. And the remoteness of morning. In the remoteness of morning, I ignore borders, all toggled up and bristling anticipation. I ignore imaginary lines in the dirt. I need to be fed, need to drink, be inoculated against the unseeable, the unknowable. A sapphire cosmos is rolled out, an experiment for the barefooted who walk on hot blue stones, who defy the biological damage. We're all survivors from a cluttered up sky. We're all someone else's creatures, and I suck on that until the toffee is gone from the apple. Concrete plated. Concrete plated, the city scratches its spine. The horns of hills react. Birds, some endangered, some clinging to the night, are lost to the listening universe, to satellite farms. Boughs flock and pulse like musical reeds of light. I water the strawberries, even though there are no strawberries, even though there are no red feathers left growing on the trees. At the Gypsy Mission Life Center, appeasement is advertised, hot meals offered. A girl wears a crucifix, she has her reasons. A man spoons fire into his mouth. Another juggles bones. The girl ties half moons and tiny owls into her hair. She clutches at today's watercolors. People head for the sand dunes, and the girl goes too, but only she ripens against the lupins, amongst the black summer seeds, where some choices fail. There are those 14-liners. I do have some longer poems. Do I have a time to do those? Some of those? I hope.
I'd say so, yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. I'm not going to tell you about them. I was going to leave the poems with you, and you can enjoy them for what they are. The important thing about these poems are the images to the poems, and the images that I leave with you. I can hear somebody outside with a chainsaw or something, so I hope it's not interrupting you. But we live in Auckland, and Aucklanders love their chainsaws. Anyway, this one is called Existence of a Passion Flower. Walking this place, famous for its steeples, its bloodletting roses, its human haunts, the backstreet operas, I throw glass stones into a swirling thermals or toxic throat. Moons carve moons. Differences impact on idols, illuminated in relief. We live the petaled existence of a passion flower. We squirm at the touch of a fingerprint on pollen. I throw glass stones, and the earth leaps up and swallows them. I risk walking between silica mouths, licking off sulfur crumbs. Visitors dress up for the event. Children dress up. They traffic ideas on heliocentric living. They light up my home. Marginalized, it's where I like to juggle my unpinned imperatives. A girl cycles towards the sun. We live a brief, petaled existence. The ground is hot, is peppered with crushed yellow crystals. This one is called Sword Woman. On meeting Dianabas. Now, I don't know whether you know Dianabas, but I presume a lot of you do. She was a New York photographer, out photographing the marginalized in our society. And I've done a little bit of reading and research on her, and I've written quite a number of poems about this marvelous photographer who lived in the middle part of last century. This is one of them, Sword Woman. And there is a famous one of hers of a woman, you know, pulling a sword out of her mouth, sort of thing. Maimed angels tumble through sun-fired shafts into valleys of glass. The sea rides tidal fields, clashes with squalls, climbs over people. In the self-made labyrinth, this uterine center, there's this precise angled gyration to every day, and every day it unfolds. Tall buildings unfold, the sky unfolds and shoots up from its hidden bunker and leans imperceptibly on its sculpture of stone. So what now? You prepare a meal and a mouth snaps open and an ancient animal latches on. A woman loosely robed pulls a sword from her throat. A man lights a newspaper, watches it burn. People on fire run into the sea. Cosmic slant. Not easy, staring into the deep end of a stormwater drain, staring at fallen planets. Something informative crosses over. I respect the braids of silence that invisibly wrap this solitary flesh in orbital grease. My afternoon is spent in an orchard amongst oranges, a cat killing finches, a woman fighting with her washing, a wind putting the boot in. Night's tug isn't far off. A lover's spoon concerto attracts a crowd of lampposts. I remember two dreams, a sequential blast of how not to analyze too much, of how rapidly the sun and moon can shoot down your hopes with silver-plated neurons, can turn your body into a vascular labyrinth of split visions. Is that enough, or do you want me to? I don't mean you want, but there you go.
That's great. That's great. Normally it's about 15 minutes for each person.
I can carry on. I can carry on. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just don't have a clock in front of me. I don't go by clocks too much. Okay. I'll carry on. You start falling asleep, let me know.
Yeah, 2 more short poems, I'd say, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, middling. Okay. Here we go. The homeless wear dreadlocks. Winter's light slides by like white ink. The ocean grunts closer. I lie in a rock pool of tessellating ripples. Seagulls crap on extinction. They crap on bad news. The tide's trick is to retrieve an island's broken voice. I take advantage of this boy and girl where one has slipped into the flesh of the other, where she lifts a cool addiction to her lips, steps up, admits being animal hungry, love hungry, holding on to samples of unglazed narratives. I splash through the sea's morning glitter, sunlight pushes beyond office blocks, invades the scaffolding of winter trees. The sea edges closer, the homeless wear dreadlocks of dreams. The city takes whatever drizzles down, whoever stoops too close to God's predatory grip, to a girl's disrupted monologue. The waves crush on lost kisses of so many people, lost in the echoes of street after street after street. And the last one. You can see the sea and the ocean. I was living on islands, on 2 large islands in the South Pacific. The sea is very much a part of our, what we see and do and live and breathe. It's part of our DNA. So this one, finishing off anyways, nothing satisfactorily. Nothing satisfactorily explains why we've come to view this last transference of evening light on clouds, on the silhouetted couple. We carry with us stories and chants of forests and deserts, of sod villages, people who live by peat and stone. We are killers and lovers, druids and cult figures surrounded by winter fires. How far the morning seems, how far the city which pulses with the buoyancy of children. Trees rustle small conversations. I grapple to understand the purpose of your body close to mine. I want to suffocate the spaces between us, squeeze out the folds of wildness. Despite difficult intentions, we need to walk these gardens, these parklands. We need to pause for a time to feel the silence of the sea. Kia ora. Thank you.
Thank you, Iain. Beautiful. And thank you for tuning in early in the morning. I hope you had your breakfast already.
Yes, I
am. Next, we would love to hear from our next feature, who is Jen Crawford. Jen is the author of 8 poetry books and chapbooks, including Coal from Cordite Books. She's the co-editor of Poet to Poet, Contemporary Women Poets from Japan, with Rina Kukuchi, and that's from Recent Work Press in 2017. And Storyground, the anthology with Paul Collis, Recent Work Press 2020. She's an associate professor of writing at the University of Canberra, and she's also lived and taught in Singapore and her birthplace, New Zealand. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Kia ora, Iain. Thank you for that wonderful reading. Thanks to the hosts for having me. I'm here on Ngunnawal country in Canberra, Australia, although, as you know, I am from Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I want to acknowledge my birthplace and acknowledge Ngunnawal country, and Ngunnawal people, the work of Ngunnawal elders, past, present and emerging, who have tended the relationship between culture and land for millennia. I also want to invoke here and just acknowledge my stepmom who died 2 weeks ago today.
So sorry to hear that.
Thank you. So I'm just gonna read and mostly probably not say too much about these. We'll see how we go. And if I run out of time and I'm still rabbiting on, I'm sure somebody will, I don't know, do something interventionary. Okay. So this is a poem actually that I wrote before lockdown, but it seems to have turned into a lockdown poem. At lunchtime, I find an old oscilloscope tucked into the hollow under a tree stump in the middle of a field. It's wrapped in tin foil and a dirty waterproof jacket. Pretty much everything seems: the field, the scope, the former tree, the decommissioned satellite dish, poetry, the falling students, the outgoing deputy, his podcast, Jawbone and the moss against the back fence. Time to go and fill in some forms. It's winter, no one's around, but when I look back, there's a guy at the stump, shorts and flip-flops, hood up, can in hand, checking the scope. Sweet new season duds. Writs in, warrants out, same again. You understand our position by moving your finger in front of your eyes. You want to be at your desk by 9. You want to put on the bumper sticker when the dealership's a mate and be no regular visitor to these basement rooms, soundproofed for reflection and questioning. Cool grassroots grow through the trash mandarins on our hearts, squat zealous inspectors that buffeting sound their statistical flubs, or they're bootstrapping the fledgling human forest to achieve extra liquid stars hum, stars die, star of silence, inextinguishable star, o winter run a bath. Give the brain a helping hand, give abandon a dreaming arch in relation to operational matters. You move like a cloud between us and don't rain. We have in the last year come out of a long period of drought here, which culminated in those fires. The next poem is called Transit Centre, and there is one part of this that borrows some language, cites some 19th century safety instructions for ships, for whaling ships that had the plague. Transit Centre. The bird stops in the reeds. People slide off her back into the water. Each holds the end of a feather so she doesn't drift away. When she's ready to leave, she'll dive and maybe come back up underneath them. For now, they mustn't move. Certainly it's cold. Knees lock, frozen against chests. But they feel the oil of the feathers in their hands. Over the horizon, morning wanders this way and that way and that way. Divots, favourites, shallows, equals, strings, hydras, opens, pans, wets, metals, arcades, unearths, air wars, bloodies, cigarettes, credibles, buildings, spans, strikes, shars, cares, paces, dwarfs, rains, barrel bombs, stomachs, picks, filthies, bastions, backs, doubles, poundings, spillovers, roots, draws, drains, latents, parts, sows, proxies, zones, cloaks, home, homes. Remember that the safety of healthy individuals, of the crew and passengers, and more particularly of the attendants on the sick, will be most certainly attained by securing the freest circulation of air about the patient, consistent with his protection from inclement weather, and by avoiding his confinement in a close space. It's time they were taken up. It's time they lay in warmth to rest. They drift down into the body of the drum. That man would like to instill an exquisitely narrow spectrum. This day begins with the sun obscured. He would like true value to be reflected in the price. In the hull, the engine is thrumming. He will cultivate an exquisitely narrow spectrum. This plane is the body of the drum. It extends in every direction, but it is curved throughout. We call for them as reflected on the surface in the hope they might have warmth and rest. On the surface is the installation. You could call this the transit centre. We lie down in their place in the hull, or will not lie down. Say now, this stranding is a gathering. Pay attention to the worm. A lot of people recording performance metrics, not too many people counting bugs. A lot of people calculating the performance metrics of the people counting bugs, not too many bugs. A lot of people devising continuous feedback loops to evaluate the performance of the pesticide sales team. Continuous feedback loops counter dwindling employee engagement levels, a plague. This is the antique front. I'm in Word. I'm in Word and on Safari on an Apple. I write the colonial state and cut it so it's on my invisible clipboard. I mean, invisible to me. And then I get colonial state advertisements while I'm on Safari. This part is the antique front. Still a little bit funny because it's still a little bit dumb, like Gestalt interpretations from a trainee therapist or Valentine's cards from an estate agent. There's still room between terms to think of metaphor, but the apple as a whole is smooth and pretty clean. Actually, I forget I'm on Safari almost constantly. That's how close it is. I'm not hungry when I'm not eating, like I never stop breastfeeding. Hand warm and a bit wet, working away at the trigger. Let's get this bread. As soft as a baby, as unable to run. Of all the mum not to disoliate, to forestall being an attraction poetics, auction-wise, viscosity and poise. Whosoever shall form a trolley full of goggles shall find patty walls provided for in the ordnance, and the laundry with 1 foot in the hall. The same station is speaking. It's the shinning dishwasher. Use a liquid extractor to announce the have 20 to 30% of the time, or be still there in the bidding, going in there in a hedged off courtyard, going in hard rice, soft rice spears, dripping the action of a natural agency, flung around in a violent action. That grammar doesn't go back, get go, I got it, buy a steamer, soften gravel like slipper gonna hug you without a soul, grain down. Steam and eat your way out. Hum. Only the unborn foal knows the name of the fly. That's the rub and the buzz inside the great taut pudding. That's the snowball algorithm for his seemingly willingly failing to appear to be handmade. Most of the narrations added in post-production, the post of an Antarctic suburb corner held for arrivals both by the mailbox and the paling still a tree. I lay him down on the changing table. I feel strongly I mustn't remind him of where he's been, that if I protect his fontanelle, it won't be with my hands. That'll be the trick right through, to be on one side or the other of the carving every time. Together on one side and failing that, ventouse, grappling hook, tightrope, failing that, total immersion, mega slushy under the stars. You do know that hum. Look up and dive, no need for recall. These poems are actually from a collection called A General Image of the Whole Countryside, Recovering from the Effects of Winter. It's unpublished as yet. I'm kind of still working on it. Tap on. Bus of wontons, dusk, tail lights, spacious day having spoken. Did I shout or get the citrus? Fall into the anti-dazzle deep blue circle moquette. Finally, it thought, a person could be without being brighter, could be with no brightness, nowhere pinned. And I would not like to miss them. This thought decoupling over decades, spires softening and progressively inverting, like self-healing can be applied to any type of architecture, but probably not in time. When I get back, the interchange is caught in an invitation to snow, bedding banked up in the supermarket lee, the automatic doors opening and opening and opening. Yeah, the birds are coming with me. So this, I'll read a longer piece. So this is a poem, or it's kind of a sequence of smaller pieces called Stone River. And it's dedicated to my friend and collaborator, Paul Collis. It was written both here on Ngunnawal country and in the towns of Burke and Brewarrina in northwestern New South Wales. So those are the unceded lands of the Barkindji people and the Niambar people. So this poem is in part responsive to the collapse of the Murray-Darling River system under the pressures of drought and climate change and the mismanagement of the water resources of that system. So that's been ongoing since colonisation. So those problems, although we've had a beautiful year of rain this year, those problems have recently seen the Brewarrina fish traps and in that area run dry for the first time in living memory, and living memory in Australia is very, very long indeed. So the fish traps are thought to be one of the oldest known human-made structures. So the final section of this poem quotes Henry Lawson's 1891 poem, Song of the Darling River, and it also references recent fish kills, so events where the river system is so degraded and so dry that a million fish died at once. Dynamiting of the nono, the fish traps for the construction of the weir, and that happened, I believe, in the 1970s. I was doing the dishes, looking out the window into the night and wondering whether these two groups of kids in the park were about to start fighting, and then they turned towards the cottage, towards me, and their shouts grew rhythmical and louder. And then I realized that I was peering at them, that through the broken blind they could see me peering at them, and that the meaning of the hole in the window above Paul's head was a stone, and that the meaning of the cage around the cottage was a stone too. I stepped away from the sink and went into the lounge where Paul was hunched under a blanket listening, and I went in there as though excited or seeking an explanation. After we picked up the rubbish around the river, my father's back was aching, and when my son woke in the night with a sore stomach, I began to be afraid, thinking of the dirty nappy I'd seen but not touched in the hollow of a rock. I'm a rubbish pick-upper, Theo said. We're going to Japan, but we're not Japanese. In the morning, he was well, and in the late afternoon, I walked back along the Nunu through warm stripes of light and shade. Where the pelicans had lifted together to wheel across the whole bed, here a single egret and then a single pelican circled low, attendant to a point, ears. There's a kangaroo in the river, alive and alone among the weeds. In Burke, I drive through a giveway without slowing, and then I end up on the wrong side of the road. My father drives through a giveway without slowing. My husband driving ends up on the wrong side of the road. At Tooral Station, the wind gives a most gentle welcome, and then it strengthens, insistent, entirely steady. I like the work, it's not as angry as I expected. Brewarrina to Narromine, corpses and loose cotton, swathes of large trees uprooted by flood. I like autumn leaves. Empty fields stacked with white bales, dry creeks, dry rivers, lone roos, small emus alone or in pairs, high fences, fur and bones. What you see is a stone smash in the window. I like sparkling water slipping down over the weir. There's so much potential there. We can clean up the point of view. The car could be damaged. I don't know why I saw it up ahead. I didn't swerve. It's about the technique. Our roadkill too fat to drive over. What are we going to pull some bags out of the water that's living the rocks, fast and slow? Are we going to be hands in there or what? Whether it's moving, I don't know this. I don't know the smell. Don't know if we're sick. Crusts on the rock, white, bright green, slow hairskins. letting out or letting in, part of an animal or water, on its whole way around, and whether we feel that that is moving. The rock here and the water that comes back, kind of time. Like an animal is thirsty and will drink, to say evaporation is not waste. All the way around the vast until same water, same rock, a kiss, hardly moved. So what are we going to dig cans out to get cut one side or another of a skin? Dig how far down the drying mud to more, to where we feel better or sick, like what's alive, like anyone who makes their home in a can and anyone who lives in plastic bags, being disturbed, feeling cast. And what are we going to go home, step outside of anger, the sun, date some carbon, put a finger on it, what we're being told, come back, hardly move and put hands in, into glue. Fish banked dead beneath the weir, stones smashed to mud. Let's go, say it, get washed, say, I've got an answer and it's ornamental. We slip our pond, we're gasping, we thrive. Take 5 minutes and run the river backwards. Spend a long time on this aesthetic and watch out, it's not finished. Lock your river, hold close the stones. We're casting rosy children to dive and swim, fair girls' feet in the rippling brim, floating parts and contagious velocity, and sucking the air, rank and sweet, nitroglycerin.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was stunning.
No problem. Thank you.
And also the animal sounds behind you also kind of added to the effect as well. I don't know if that was calculated or not, but it definitely worked beautifully.
It's much nicer outside today than in.
What were those sort of high-pitched sort of monkey type sounds in the background?
Yeah, I'm actually, I think it's a Corella.
Which is?
Kind of a parody thing.
I see.
One of many parody type things we have around here. There are also the loud, extremely raucous ones are cockatoos, but there are also galahs and crimson rosellas and rainbow lorikeets and magpies and crows.
Wow. And they hover around your home?
Yeah, we happen to live in an extremely leafy area, which is, yeah, absolutely full of bird life. It's amazing, but it's also a little bit of a bubble. Yeah.
Understand. Thank you so much again. And Lisa Samuels is our next reader, who works with experimental writing, sound and visual art, and relational theory in transnational life. Her most recent book is the prose poem, The Long White Cloud of Unknowing, which came out from Chax Press in 2019. And she has new essays in the journals Knowledge Cultures, Kamateka Ora, and Performance Paradigm. Lisa lives in New Zealand and works as a professor of English at the University of Auckland. In 2021, Boiler House Press will bring out her new poetry book, Breach. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hey, it's lovely to be here. Yeah, hi. Thank you. Thank you, Iain. Thank you, Jen. Wonderful to hear the poems and to hear the birds, as you say. I thought about having open windows here, but then I was thinking about things like lawnmowers. So, so yeah, the timing is good to know about, and I'm going to adapt my reading a little bit in relation to it, which is all good. I'm going to read. I'm going to start from a manuscript called Live Stream, which is imagined as, and actually I'm going to change my view so that I can see the gallery. There we are. Hi, everybody. Yay. Thanks for being here. It's imagined as having to do with sort of flexions and blends between ecological and digital being, including, I know Jen was talking about rivers, including a relation to Te Awa-Tapua, the 2017 decision to make a river have the legal rights of personhood here in New Zealand. And we've been going forward with those kinds of allocations. So this is from Live Stream. scouring the planet's nerve geometry. The other instinct gravels my chest against the air. I mean to open the chest, to have more a target revelry in the window, like a tumult. How can blind celerity cuss so fast the topic streaks behind? I mean, it's only breakfast and my credence clearly plush notes on the door, from which behind there'll be a testimony, quiet shout, open the door, yell, like to accept, the made up multi-part fabric, the real, like it's made of dense sheen hair, like Kofi blossom bells entwined with kitchen flanks, like endoderm inhaling what's called meaning, that rolled near against the touch. Curtain raiser on the other side, cool on the insistence, roaming, lambs to the daughter. Airbrush, revocation salts I'm eating, savoring my win tips, tip, tip, living in the restless air and echo scrivings, focus on the singer's trigonometry. It's also really here, words, reason, hooch, trees, ardor, faster, frill, slow, laughter, afternoon, the advent, nary one boast, nor one canyon to collection sage, not even one bluff, nor addition, swamps emergent, half dark, scope there, better than an absinthe. Look, your teeth are vibrant, universals, blissful, advent, scuppers, and the sky piece. Birds are digging everything. Blue, ships dazzling, earth we came for. Look at the roustabout, much of a muchness. The guns made of silly putty lucida in the open-armed equation gallery. Hurt, stirring in the soft features, blanch on trees. Tell me you're not on the power dole, sweet cup. Cold or hot feelers thumping at the warm balloon. The chest height flower to flower, death by proxy in the curved fruit scent, apparent scorched mouth at the social clatter of shadows. The memory foam of history builds a treehouse deep in pitch, light staggers an echo worth stirring orthodoxies, so-called who. Teeth glowing wet with construct, legs trembling with the sound. We could stomp along mid-light, grade flesh, red amp, greater than the person drove. Fast, emergency, mouth animals, so pedestrian I could have yanked. There's a fight to be parkour, unsexed or metro celestian from aromas of dash. The plastic notational body, no more Euclid than pushed on the stone, breathing the stretch of plastic, flashes of stripped leaves running. He's running. Other versions of himself peer out. I mean, mensural incitement of cyclical habitude. I mean, really not a stevedore or white shot scanning up the sky. It's more the wet stutter of the animal perching the entire smile, gurgling scoliosis of the other of a mind not its own. I mean, sacral apse, all ears, stop, grind the road, a light like reel out newbies pour a clean yawn, brute sound, phasing on the twin dial, branch to branch and cloud scours at each other's backs. Miles of cameras, all glued shut by heat. No one rides the bicycles. They are no one. Sweet relief, flesh light flack on the mind, on the extremely old street beach, the light port, astonishing guild usher, laughing with the lungs, pinched at the mouth, gently unexploded, tonics, utter range, a grainy portage, similar, not suitable for kayaking at the face, the water, flat as rain, light crystal, thirsty for the pitch, surrounds the power station cut hole, airstrips in the mind. The thick paper of soft friends rolling warm dispersals through a ready-made crust of life. Air floss in the crinkly soft fluorescent blue dumps its audacity nearer to the mirror, dark as instruments, heart on the lease, stripped out rectangle of memories flashing like red and white fair play, like a word is an egg that gives birth to other eggs, tattooed with its credibly obliviated skeleton, hysterical intimacy. Oh, Ta, really, thank you. I told the swallow to fly to the solid cloud. I swallowed. Vehicular sight, smacking the doomed grass with a fresh coat of paint. Swimming in the air, albeit like a river rose, skimming blue-white tillage, I told the swallow, go there really fast. The swallow desired its own wings and swallowed. So those are the poems from live stream, which again is imagining water and digitality and violence and imbrication. Yeah, different things. So then I'm going to read from just one more thing. It's a manuscript, like Jen and like perhaps a lot of you, I wrote somewhat during lockdown. And this one, Breach, came in a sweep. And it's actually going to be published by Boiler House Press this year, which is really nice. They're a UK poetry press. Yeah, and I'll just kind of skip along from Breach. So this is very much written where I'm standing in Tamaki Makaurau in Auckland, in Aotearoa, New Zealand. How's everybody doing? All right? It's nice to have you here and to see you. All right. The hypertrophic bell extends its infamy. Well, you can see the culture sit in at the face, whose magnets pearl the screen or come refrigerate in cluster alpha bets bit cut another given mealtime in commodity country. Outbreak model, dishing at the spoon, not run away. Packed foil dishes. In some stars, we're hungry all the time, recollecting what shared breath that Donish spiritual kitsch on a plate, all about presentation. Movies taught us everything we know, how to falter accentually, how to give big hugs to distance, as though sculpted through the breather's lucky road. You've got leftovers on your hands from petting the car again, close-ish near the air door, vault the truly productive finish line, an endless asphalt stage. For you're not dead exactly, close to home, its walls and windows respiratory to breeze. A subcontrastic change filiates barbells, make your arms of co-captivity duress. You dress, the part of civic gendarme inhaled, I told you so, in slabs on the front lawn or fire bell muffled in the basement dance, each cat arresting its arithmetic slumber walks the walk. Pat down the rules of every mouthful near the bed leaves, trees huffed there to hide the history. Anyone still swigging the gift of finitude got very near, which makes you feel. Plugins and fine app arts co-extend their mercantiles of blandishment. Pretty, so, turn yourself out near. Piled up articles of coastline, the pockets of a life vent, stuck your arms out, lower legs to find you're camping and some other idea of the generous what magnitude of shake nor tasty reel serves up your back deck breakfast, lunch, and snack time, adds your right to pay conviction, clambers in the chamber of a purple 1 whole year. You find a strong cup helpful to brush teeth with. You can hold its blank surrender often fractions of an outside turn your chorus art to stands on grid, though any guilt from not dying stays so over itself. You're the one dangling DNA across the dream, shot from a dislocate and absent arms. In the yard are replacement strategies, one box for another full of harm magnets. You can tweak and fling them toward a catchment cull of stuff resembling V to O. The yard is full of ghosts. So animals and eatables, all the fruit and misdirection flanks, dry hills credibly turned up from a prior oceanic pressure, totally not here. Tell yourself stories of perfection, wrought, find documents, circa land pools everywhere, transnational, circa newly won, bought chemicals, new fissures, and the antique documents pouring in between the cities, circa where the lumber goes, the slum plots where you, not to ask for bread. So tellingly, multiple dictions. We're sorry, what could we possibly miss? No rankling in the diatribe of economy, whose mouth sucks on the boober I and thou look hotly to contest. Rank meaning fibs the statisticians, trying really hard to hold their arms up to the heads of anyone. Listen. To turn a corner dime store host, everyone pops out from their infamy. Game on question in fine form teleprompt, I'm okay today. As thought flies close to the strata of the advertised. You're well again, you're well enough to leave a load of excrement, paste and a muddy growing floor where someone's gross percent peeks out, so forced to pay attention from the cabinet, where a power suck cleans their death. So really very absent of wet, so turned a corner, a vacuum of weight cells newly banged on walls. You turn on the light and become official discourse. Raw principality markers wedged inside conducive barriers where they teem and writhe. The zones astride the light are also sourced. They ride the ambivalent principalities straight into the bark, partway at least. Covering your living place with felt, you reveal large operations, screenage, like the show. You are, watch this, talk, revel, wait, again. The mattings very convince. One thick, damp thread, cone-struck in the unconcealed. Like everything around here is a refit World War II, the batting, the prerogatives, elbow maps, ideas of what's sheer. You very strongly consider re-inhabiting the token. There's a tablecloth, every nice beside the planet song comes up, pika, pika, synchronic babble, a recreation of what the light turns on. Dinner's ready, again. Thank you very much. Maybe we can have everybody on sound now. It'd be lovely to hear where you are, your ambience.
Thank you, Lisa. That was amazing. Now we're moving on to our open mic section of Lit Balm, which will be hosted by our co-host Cassandra.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much for reading. My favorite section is, where we get to meet the people at the beginning, and then we also get some open mic. So we get some regulars and some new people who read their poems for us and contribute to this kind of curation. So the brilliance will continue. We have Harvey who's up first. So I see that Harvey's in the house, and I think that Jonathan's going to unmute him and we can hear from him. I think Harvey is still on mute.
Yes.
Yay. Yes, now I can.
Okay. I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. I've posted in the chat an invitation to a reading series that I host, usually in the room that's pictured behind me. I don't know if you can see it, but presently virtually. It's called Artful Dodgers Poetry. I've posted contact information and also a Zoom link to join us, hopefully on February 13th, our next date. I'd like to be able to read 2 poems if I can, but you'll let me know. The first I wrote on Holocaust Remembrance Day a couple of days ago, and the second a couple of days before that. Okay, let's get to it. The first poem is called His Name Was Yitzhak. As her father was being dragged away, a fate common to those deemed no longer useful, whose cards were stamped invalid, and all who had managed to somehow piss a guard off, he called out to her, "Remember my name, child." That she had survived was a miracle in itself, able to purchase with her credit card a lampshade at Bed, Bath, and Beyond without fear of its being some friend of hers whose skin had been flayed. If the Allied troops had waited just one more day, their tanks and trucks mired down in the mud or engaged in suppressing skirmishers who stood in their way, those Aryans who hadn't yet blacked their hair with shoe polish, the camp liberators might have found her, a gymnast whose cartwheeling promise had mushroomed by 10, positioned atop a pile of bones as if vaulting to freedom. A thumbs down discard among the discarded, a rack of ribs with not even a child of her own to remember her. Having decamped in Bronx, New York after the war, she endures this Holocaust Remembrance Day as she has before, parentless, alone, her grown children too busy with their lives. No mother dreidel spinning in a new dress to burst through the door with honey cake and a mischievous smile. No father in his self-advertising furrier's imperial fur coat drumming up business, well regarded by customers despite his Jewishness as purebloods angling for discounts were at pains to remind him. Collaborators smug in their forbearance. She has since felt herself half-baked, a pastry snatched from the oven too soon. How is a girl not having bled supposed to become a woman without a mother, hair done up in a bun, to pat her on the head, urge her to finish her homework, point her in the right direction, be her Kaddish compass? This night she will light a candle in their names, say a prayer in Aramaic, a curse in English, the latter with a bitter taste. On this day of remembrance, she remembers them all, father, mother, sister, brother, all those whom a shortened lifetime of l'chaim's failed to preserve, but her father especially, calling out to her. His name was Yitzhak, hers, Sophia. Do I have time for another one or not?
I'm sorry, we've got a full list of wonderful people, but that was so powerful and a great way to start. And my favorite line's got to be a pastry snatched from the oven too soon. I love that one. It's a really original metaphor, and thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
We
I
have,
hope you'll join us.
yeah, and good luck with artful dodges. Mr. Tetsuzomic, I'm not sure of your first name or whether you like to be called Mr. So can I ask you to unmute and enlighten us about where you are and, yeah, give us one of your pearls of poetry.
Yeah, good afternoon here.
You're a bit low. I don't think we can hear you that well. Is it possible to turn your sound up?
Can you hear me now?
That's better. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
I want to do a reverse land recognition. I want to recognize the land behind me up in the north in Hicks Bay. So that's where my travels out there. So thank you. I have one piece. This is titled The Spectre Writer. You have to understand deeply that we don't need the writer. What we need is the story, because this keeps us alive. Our fragile hopes, our fragile aspirations, our longings of various kinds of sustained by belief in some things that are found in stories. So we've always got to be thinking about the reader's need. Barry Lopez. When you speak of the specters, you will immediately be relegated to the wastebasket of intellect, the unenlightened neophyte who believes in superstitions. But as BIPOC people, we're keenly aware of the gaze. We have the system of power gaze, the male gaze, the feminine gaze, an imperial gaze, the white gaze, and anthropomorphic gaze. In these, we have to project the attitude of, don't fuck with me. If you do, I'm gonna go crazy on you. I'm gonna cut you like a motherfucker. Failure to physically enunciate will relegate you to the specter of prey. The popo will prey on you with their knees and batons, their qualified immunity, and unlimited monopolic violence. Our people will swindle you, rob you, kill you, steal from your home out of their own desperation of deprivation. This is the imminence of being in place, burying yourself in the asphalt so only your unblinking eyes appear, the urbanized, piss-stained, trash-strewn awareness and perception of others, groups, and oneself, the existential phenomena and phenomenology of being enclosed in place. Sartre's devilish description of the gaze, of the look and being and nothing is the birth of the spectral prison imbued with the dynamics of social political power, the slave keeper of social dynamics of society's mechanisms of discipline, the animal that therefore I am, elaborated upon the interspecies relations that exist among human beings and other animals, which is established by the way of the gaze, the forbidding gaze of the anxious state of mind. It comes with self-awareness that we can't be seen and looked at. We are gazed via the sky, via the phone lines, via the cans, via the blinds, in a kind of sublime murder. A psychological effect of being subjected to the gaze is a loss of autonomy, of becoming aware that one is the visible object. We are brought back to our insecure infantile mirror stage where we encounter ourselves as an external appearance, a kind of social order specter, ghostly subjects produced by an inanimate object. Any anxious movement can trigger an awareness. Any object can induce self-awareness of being in the material world of reality. This is the violent confrontation where we can fall into the trap of social obligation or the negation of the other. The gaze is face-to-face joust, because only there do people exist for one another. The Arctic gaze is of the theft of every jewel of heat. The desert gaze is of stillness, the movement of matter for matter's sake, not for time's sake. The wolf gaze is of the metaphorically rich anthropological machine. We need the poet gaze, the writer's gaze, to look at us without being seen, to hide behind the saliency of ourselves, to tell us the sublime injury, to suture us with the stanzas, to tell us to get up the next day, to take the next step. Because there is no end to the differential generative power of gaze, the paleologal gaze, the withdrawn gaze, the oppositional gaze, the post-colonial gaze, the male tourist gaze, the MAGA gaze, the COVID gaze, the insurrection gaze. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was beautifully performed as well. And so much to take away from that. I loved, especially at the beginning, what we need is the story, you know, and then we need to unpick the gaze. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And our next person is Cindy, who is one of our regulars and always has something exciting for us to hear.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure, Cassandra.
Oh, sorry.
But I'm going to read a very strange prose poem. And because it's strange, Jonathan Penton published it in Unlikely Stories. So I'm going to put the link here in the chat so that you could all sing along with me. And it's called Poet Bio. And I'm the editor of an online magazine called First Literary Review East. And we specialize in very short poems. And I always love when people send me a haiku and then their bio is 3 pages long. So I decided to do a little riff on Poet Bio. I was born in 1957. I voted for Dwight D. Eisenhower. I've been published in many online journals. My mouth is dry from the lithium, and my cold veins are gushing warm blood as we speak. I've never been nominated for a pushcart prize. Is it dusty in here, or is it just me? My body is a rectangle of tangles and right angles. I believe in geometric expression. But what should I do with this severed arm, Ma? My work has appeared in Iowa and on the moon. I have translated Sylvia Plath and Ogden Nash into Sanskrit. My mother told me three things: to cross my I's, dot my T's, and stop dressing like a whore. So I became a prudish proofreader. Remind me to take my Prozac in 2 hours. God is not my co-pilot, he's my chauffeur. He drives me to greener pastures while I drink Jesus juice from the wet bar in the back seat. I'm sick of seeing black flies covering the faces of black children. I'm sick of seeing one-eyed cats in cruel cages. I plan to get my master's as soon as this crippling depression passes. I've been translated into Italian, Farsi, and Pig Latin. I've heard that the pigs really love my poems. Last night, I dreamt of hearses and amputations. Or maybe it was horses and allegations. REM sleep has terrible acoustics. When I eat strawberries, I blush. When I drink milk, my tongue swells. When I drink wine, I have epiphanies. Nah, Jewish girls don't get epiphanies. We get matzo ball soup, bad marriages, lousy sex. My latest chapbook is Corpus Delicti, Body of Crime. I have no idea where the body was hidden. My lawyer thinks he can get me off. I'm honored to have my work published in this fine journal. Does this bio need to be in third person? Is it too many words? Thank you.
That was fantastic. I was right to build you up. That was amazing.
Thank you. I think I'll send it in.
It's really great. Thank you. We have a new person, Lila, who was talking to us earlier today. Well, today for me, this evening for you guys. And she's going to read for us. Lila, are you ready?
Yep, I have something that I wrote while waiting for my turn.
Well, that's
and then I have a bunch of other stuff if I have time. I don't know. We'll see.
We've just got time for one because we've got someone else on after you.
It's called Alarming. Okay, whatever. We'll see how the time goes. It's called Alarming. What do you see in my eyes, convict? Can you look into your own? Recall 1996 and the cowardice made known. My friends used to greet with laughter that self-inflicted plight and boast thus, we are different. We won't go without a fight. What went down under was a lesson to all, and then there was another with the neighbor next to fall. Now in the guise of an old man with big plans and not a clue, the specter of danger looms over the cradle too. At the mercy of a shrink or a grudge-bearing ex-wife, they say, be ready to relinquish your means to protect your life. Here's the time to prove it if you think you're exceptional. Now, if you roll over, the world of Anthem will not remain fictional. What does my envious heart know, grown in the shadows of T-34s? More than it should, friend, more than it wants to. I understand your longing for open hearts and open doors, but to get that, there are some things you'll have to do. And giving up is not one of those things. Not now, not ever. No compromises, no more trying to be clever. Remember down under and their neighbor next to fall. Feel the weight of watchful eyes fixed on your skin and all. Yeah. That was a
Thank
short
you.
little thing.
Thank you so much.
Do I have
We
to
don't
shut
have
up
time
now?
for another one because we've only got 5 minutes, but that was great. A great taste of the things you write, open hearts and open doors. Thank you so much. And we need to move to Bob. Bob Heeman is going to finish up our scintillating reading today. So Bob, are you ready to roll?
I'm ready. Hi, Cassandra.
Hi, how are you?
Okay.
It's always a good day when Bob ends the open mic.
Thanks. Information. They will eat the dead. They will eat their own hands. They will eat the machines that look like trees and the water that trickles out of the sky. They will eat the dreams that might have saved them and the words that will try to explain it all. They will eat the future even before it is able to arrive.
Wow, that was awesome. What a fantastic way to end. I think we need a huge round of applause and loads of heart and clapping emojis to thank all of the readers today, our amazing headliners, Iain, Jen, and Lisa, and our absolutely brilliant open mic today. And I'm going to throw to Mark, who always has something kind of wise and enigmatic to say to end our lip balms.
Well, first off, the next episode is on February 13. It's with Barrel House Magazine, and the showcase features Megan Pipe, E.G. Schwartz, Jose Hernandez Diaz, Naomi Ayala, and John Brown with guest MC Tara Campbell. So please join us for that. That's in 2 weeks. And what a wonderful show tonight. Unbelievable. It's so amazing to have people from all the sides of the planet congregate together and enjoy this amazing literature. And thank you, New Zealand and Australia. And well, hope to see you next week. It's been wonderful. Love you all. Lots of poetry, lots of love. We're almost out the other side, I think. See you next time.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Mwah.